Welcome to episode 11 of Breaking, Building, Belonging, a Better Together Story and Guide. And this episode is a Go Deeper episode. It's taking a deep cut on episode 9, where we talk about some very challenging situations and some potentially relationship damaging for life kinds of things. And then we talked about in episode 10 how to use that situation, how to use that messy, anger-filled situation in positive ways and how to turn it positive. And one of the things that we talk about is both Brene Brown and Admiral Jim Stockdale's advice about not hanging on to some of that anger. And so this Go Deeper episode talks about how we should not build a fortress around our hearts. And it's based on, again, a hero of mine from the music world, Sting. The poet of my youth was Gordon Sumner, Sting. The first concert I attended was Dream of the Blue Turtles, his debut solo album. And that was kind of odd for a kid my age, as all my other friends more typically attended the Journey, AC/DC, and Kiss concerts. But I loved all that music too. It's just that my teen and young adult heart was drawn to the Billy Joels, the Elton Johns, the James Taylors, and the Stings of the world. And so when we're young, suffering through all this unrequited love and longing and trying to figure out who we are, the songs of our youth have a different meaning. They apply in various ways. And I now feel that the test of a great piece of music is that if that song can grow along with you and gain alternate meaning along with you, hopefully you can gain wisdom and understanding from it. So when I first heard Fortress around my heart, Fortress, my thoughts were fixed on unrequited teenage love and angst. I wanted to build a bridge to some girl's heart that I had a crush on. And well, let's say I'm thankful that bridge was never built, but you couldn't have told me that at the time. Oh, our hormones are a fantastic elixir. At the time, Sumner's lyrics acted on my young, wounded heart as salt and salve. I realized I likely didn't get the song's intended meaning until much later. Here's what Sting says about his song, and I'll share a little bit of the lyrics in the book, but we might have some difficulty doing that without making this podcast a little bit too long, so you'll have to look those up. He says, "Fortress is about appeasement. It's about trying to bridge the gaps between individuals. The central image is a minefield that you've laid around this other person to try and protect them. Then you realize that you have to walk back through it." I think it's one of the best choruses I've ever written. And, you know, he talks a lot. If you're not familiar with the song, he talks a lot about how, there's this difficulty and that he fights battles that he invented inside his head, that he wants to build a bridge, but he cannot fill a chasm. And he says, "Let me set the battlements on fire." So, part of it is, "And if I've built this fortress around your heart, encircled you in trenches and barbed wire, then let me build a bridge, for I cannot fill the chasm, and let me set the battlements on fire." And then just like Admiral Stockdale and Brene Brown says, he talks about how the prison has now become your home, a sentence you seem prepared to pay. It took a day to build the city. We walked through its streets in the afternoon. And as I returned across the fields I'd known, I recognized the walls that I once made. I had to stop for fear of walking on the mines I'd laid. And so, when we think about this, have you ever sought to reconcile with someone that you encircled in trenches and barbed wire, setting them aside, building in the distance, letting time and physical and emotional space create a chasm between you? We probably all do this to some degree every day with various people. Often this is only a natural outgrowth of the changing seasons of life or bandwidth, but sometimes it's deeper than that. Sometimes where we are a full-on intentional battlefield construction crew, separating ourselves from one another on purpose. But inevitably, just as the poet Sting shares with us, right after we build up the battlements around ourselves and the others, we go off and fight some battle we invent inside our heads. We fill our thoughts with all these things that may or may not be true about the other person since we were last close to them. Things like, they probably think or even wish that I was dead. It's a poignant representation of those kinds of thoughts. Ultimately, this only makes the chasm deeper, the battlements sturdier, and the barbed wire sharper. This fear of what the other is thinking, this damage that we do by cutting the ties that bind us, however tenuous, creates a condition where, over time, there are no flags of truce, there are no cries of pity. The armies all just lay there sleeping, and we know we have a minefield to walk through to get back to that person. And the dynamic keeps people away, sometimes forever. If they do reconcile, it is a painful and treacherous journey as they navigate the mines that they laid down with sparse, misconstrued, or a vacuum of communication in the intervening time frame. What does this mean for us? What can and should we do about it? Is reconciliation always the right thing? I'm not sure complete reconciliation is always correct, and I'm not sure you have to build a bridge with every person you ever built battlements around. Sometimes the risk is real, but the key is to make sure we haven't simply convinced ourselves the risk is authentic. The trick is to make sure we are not inventing battles inside our heads to avoid the discomfort of walking on the mines we've laid. However, I would challenge you to be careful about how many people you keep in the fortress. I would ask that you scan the horizon and look for all the keeps, moats, forts, and chasms in your life's landscape. I would share that when I did this, I found several bridges that needed rebuilding, which was hard work. I had to walk through those blank, insert curse words here, mines I'd laid with several people, and it was some of the scariest stuff I've ever done. Yet in hindsight, just like our invented battles, I realized the fear and my prediction of the number of mines I found waiting for me was nothing like what I encountered. In each case, I found walking back much easier than I ever allowed myself to believe. If it was so scary, you might ask, why do it? Isn't life more manageable when we keep our distance? I have found that this is a deception. It can feel more accessible in the short run, and I think that it's what gave birth to Sting's epic song and many of our wall building endeavors. Along the way, I've learned I don't get to keep the battlements up where they are no longer necessary. I learned to build bridges, and that freeing the people I sought to reconcile with from the barbed wire is healthier. And I saw a video of these two bucks locking horns over barbed wire, and you can probably guess the result. Neither one of those was spared the barbs. The harder they fought to separate from each other, the tighter the wire became, until some brave farmers with wire cutters came and cut them free. So my question to you is, shouldn't you start cleaning out the barbed wire? Are there people in your life that you have let grow far from you, who may have hurt you or them, that you should reconcile with? Forgiveness doesn't mean you put yourself in harm's way, and it doesn't have to be accomplished all in one day. Sometimes we must start removing the battlements one brick at a time. Sometimes we approach gingerly like the farmers trying to free the buck. And what does that look like? Well, I've used several techniques. Sometimes it's a simple text. Sometimes it's sharing a funny meme or a YouTube video that you know they would like, or a song that you know they would appreciate. Sometimes it's a paper letter or a card delivered through the mail to keep the back and forth of the buck's thrashing horns at bay until you can get close enough with the clippers. Sometimes it's calling the person on the phone. Whatever it is, I want to encourage you to take a step. Do your scan. Pick one fortress. Take down one brick. I want you to soar, and I know that you cannot do it any more than those bucks can while you are tangled in the barbed wire of your grievances with one another. So do one small thing today to build the bridge, light the match, and set the battlements you have built between you and others on fire. I want to see you soar, and I'll see you in the next chapter where we're going to talk about my grandma.